The Council's arrogance blinds them as they attempt to dissect what they think is just another primitive Terran relic, but the human warship. Silent Verdict is no relic, and it's not dead. A lone admiral watches from orbit as ancient Earth. Vengeance awakens beneath the scalpel of alien pride. What follows begins the unraveling of a galactic illusion. This isn't a warship, it's a tomb. The words echoed across the observation chamber aboard the Zentari flagship Clarion Gaze. Below, suspended in stasis fields and tractor webbing, the derelict floated, a matte black leviathan shaped like no other craft in known space. It had no visible weapons, no comm signals, and no registry codes. Just one name engraved in oxidized Terran steel: Silent Verdict. The sector was remote, beyond the drift expanse, in what used to be called the Sol Graveyard. Now, 7 alien science vessels orbited the lone ship, transmitting data back to the Council's core systems. Inside the main lab of Clarion Gaze, a dozen alien minds buzzed with triumph. "This proves it," said High Scholar Zereth, his gilled mouth clicking. "Humanity's last military vestige. Abandoned, silent for centuries, now it's ours to learn from." Zereth waved his translucent hand. The internal scan began, a deep, lattice pulse that should have sliced through even the most primitive alloys. But the moment it touched the hull, the screens inside the chamber bled black. "System error?" a technician barked. "No, wait, it's feeding data back to us." It reversed the scan. The image on the main display changed. A face appeared, not one of theirs, not even alive. It was a human, female, late 40s, hair braided back in tight coils, blood on her cheek. She looked directly into the camera that shouldn't have existed. "Still watching?" she whispered, then smiled, and then everything went dark. Above them, hidden inside the asteroid ring on the edge of the sector, the UNS Dauntless floated, silent as a phantom. Admiral Rahman watched the unfolding chaos with arms crossed and pulse-calm. His command deck glowed with red ambient light. "They opened it," his comms officer murmured. "Of course they did," Rahman replied. "They always do." No one spoke. They didn't have to. The room held its breath with him. All around the Dauntless, tiny pulses of light flared, not from their ship, but from the silent satellite web buried across the sector. Invisible until now, passive, waiting. The Council never knew Earth left tripwires behind. Below, on the Zentari ship, alarms shrieked. The alien scientists were frozen, staring at their screens. Zereth tried to speak, but blood began to pour from his nostrils. He gasped and collapsed. One by one, the others followed. Nerve overload. A defense mechanism from the warship? No, it was worse. Inside the Silent Verdict, lights came on. But not slowly. Not like a reboot, like it woke up. In the chamber buried inside the warship's core, something ancient moved. It wasn't AI. It wasn't a weapon. It was memory, recorded pain, condensed hate. The suffering of Earth's colonies, distilled into data. A psychic scream layered across quantum channels. It wasn't built to kill, it was built to remember, and anyone who touched it, truly touched it, felt what Earth felt during the final betrayal. "They think they're dissecting tech," Rahman muttered from orbit. "They're dissecting ghosts." His XO turned to him. "Orders?" Rahman took a long breath. "Transmit the symbol." "Aye, sir." 1 moment later, every Zentari ship within 1 AU received a single holographic glyph, a circle, split in two. Black and white, old Earth's last warning. It had no translation, no context. Just a timestamp. You opened the door. Back aboard the Silent Verdict, panels hissed open, one after another, revealing dormant drone racks, ancient coil banks, and systems built not for battle, but broadcast. The warship had no weapons because it didn't need any. The weapon was the story. Every alien that had touched its data would now carry the human scream across the stars. High Scholar Zereth convulsed, eyes wide, whispering, the children, screaming. Why won't they stop? Because Earth never forgot. Because someone had to carry the sound of extinction. The Zentari fleet's admiral sent a transmission to the Council. Abort recovery. Quarantine the sector. Burn everything. But it was too late. The silent verdict had already sent its payload through subspace, through time, through minds. It didn't care about being studied. It came to teach. From orbit, Admiral Rahman allowed himself one sip of whiskey. His XO asked, "What happens now?" He didn't smile, he didn't blink, he just whispered, "Now they learn." And somewhere deep inside the silent verdict, a countdown began, not to destruction, to awakening. The Council scrambles to contain the psychic backlash now spreading across their fleets. The attempt to study the silent verdict has become a viral catastrophe. Meanwhile, Admiral Rahman activates the second phase, an Earth-coded operation buried in silence for centuries. But one alien scientist, still alive, begins to understand what humanity really left behind, and it terrifies him. Silence no longer meant peace. In the Zentari medical bays orbiting the Sol graveyard, chaos painted the walls in blood and screams. Scholars clawed their own faces. Engineers babbled in ancient dialects. Machines shorted from ghost data as the psychic backlash tore through systems never designed to withstand human grief. The silent verdict was broadcasting, but not in hertz, not in electromagnetic waves. It was broadcasting pain, the final moments of humanity's broken past wrapped in the warship's soul, now infecting minds light years away, and it was still ramping up. Council Admiral Vorex Thulek stood in his command bubble surrounded by artificial calm and a dozen layers of shielding. He had once survived a solar collapse. He had crushed rebellions on frost worlds. He had never felt fear, until now. "Report!" he barked, mandibles clicking. "Psychic transference," his intelligence officer choked out. "It's viral, Admiral. Spread via observation systems. Anyone who visually processed the silent verdict, even remotely, is affected." "That's not possible." "Sir, it's already reached half the sector. Civilian outposts are going dark. Scientists on Rigel 3 dissolved their own brains." Thulek turned to the image, still pulsing on his main holodisplay, the engraved hull of the Terran warship. The words were no longer just letters. They throbbed, pulsed, whispered into the minds of anyone who looked too long. Silent verdict. He shut the feed down. It didn't help. Behind him, the Council's emergency AI flickered to life. Containment probability, 8% and falling. Recommend evacuation of core systems. Initiating Project Veilfall. Thulek snarled. "No, we do not run from primitives. We've ruled for 10,000 years. Earth was broken, scattered, forgotten." The AI paused. Earth was listening. And then it shut itself off. Admiral Rahman watched the chaos unfold like a conductor in orbit. One screen showed a Zentari battlecruiser spinning uncontrollably, crew incapacitated by seizures. Another showed the core reactors of a science station, going critical not from external damage, but internal meltdown. Something inside the data, something alive, was infecting command decisions, sowing madness in those unprepared for Earth's legacy. His XO, Commander Imani, leaned in. "They're trying to wipe their own data cores." "Won't work," Rahman said. "The verdict infected sublayer 9, hardwired channels. The infection is psychological, not digital. You can't format guilt." He stood. For the first time. "In hours. Open channel. Earth code." Imani nodded. "Encrypted to all remaining Ark ships?" Rahman closed his eyes. "Initiate Exodus Wake." Far from the battlefield, on a forgotten moon in the veiled reaches, a tiny Earth-built bunker came alive. Its systems had not seen light in 300 years. Dust fell as buried fusion cells flared to life. Inside, 7 cryopods hissed open. The humans. Inside blinked at the light. Each bore a single rank tattoo across the neck, Silent Legion, and on the wall behind them, glowing letters emerged. They touched the verdict. Now finish the sentence. Back aboard the Silent Verdict, something had changed. The warship no longer waited to be dissected. It now moved, thrusters flared, trajectory bent, alien tethers snapped like fishing lines around a beast far too large to reel in. Aboard the crippled science vessel Clarion Gaze, one alien still lived. His name was Kalith, and unlike the others, he hadn't reached for glory. He had doubted. He had watched silently as his peers stabbed data probes into human code, and he had felt it first. The scream. Now he huddled beneath an overturned console, blood dripping from his nostrils, ears ringing with a voice not his own. But something strange had happened. The scream hadn't broken him. It had spoken to him. It whispered, "You knew, you saw, so now you carry us." He didn't know what "us" meant, but his mind held images he had never seen before. Cities turned to ash, a child looking to the sky before. A council drone erased her shadow, a mother carving coordinates into stone before swallowing poison. These weren't memories, they were witnesses, embedded deep inside the Silent Verdict. Earth hadn't stored data, it had stored testimony, and now it was spreading. Kalith crawled toward the comms deck. He had to warn them, not the council. They deserved this. Someone else, someone who might still listen. He reached the panel and hardwired. A message, his hands shook. "Not a warship," he whispered into the mic. "It's a court, and we're the ones on trial." He hit Send.Council HQ, located in the crystalline towers of Avon Prime, received the message within 30 seconds. It played automatically in the security archives. By the time the Director General heard it, it was already too late. Across the core systems, monuments were cracking, not from explosives, from inside, as nano-memorials hidden by Earth centuries ago activated, broadcasting human truth in every major council city. One statue of a Zentari, war hero, melted in public, revealing a hologram of children being marched into burning fields. Another plaza flooded with light as a voice echoed across the skies. The council said, "We attacked first." They lied. The lie couldn't survive exposure, and now no one could shut it off. Back on the UNS Dauntless, Admiral Rahman stepped into the briefing chamber with 6 senior officers. The lights dimmed. A glowing sphere hovered in the center. "Earth's last galactic map. It's begun," he said quietly. Commander Imani spoke. "How many infected sectors?" 13, confirmed. 8. Collapsing in communication integrity. Council fleets are grounding themselves, afraid of opening visual feeds. Captain Morales raised a brow. "Sir, what's the next step?" Rahman's eyes narrowed. "We don't fight," everyone paused. "We let the truth burn through the stars." "But sir," Morales insisted, "if they retaliate, they won't. They can't. You can't shoot guilt." Silence followed. Then Rahman added, "But if they try..." He pressed a button. A side panel opened. Behind it stood the true weapon of Earth's last age. Not ships, not bombs, but records, encrypted confessionals, weaponized trauma. AI-guided holographic memory clusters that injected raw emotion into neural linkages. Stories, truthful ones, that felt too real. "That's what we built," Rahman said. "Not weapons, not fleets." He looked around. "We built history they couldn't ignore." In the heart of the Silent Verdict, Kalith crawled to the central node. He didn't know why he was being spared. Perhaps the ship saw his doubt as mercy, or maybe it needed a witness. Either way, the node opened. Inside, thousands of tiny orbs floated. Each glowing blue, memories, untold, unjudged. Kalith reached out. The ship didn't resist. The moment his claw touched the nearest orb, he saw it. Not a battle. Not politics, just a moment. A child clutching a stuffed animal, asking her father if the stars would be kind. Kalith fell to his knees. "We never heard them," he whispered, and then the ship responded, "Now you carry them." In the council's upper chambers, leaders screamed at each other. "We need to destroy the warship. We need to delete the feeds. We must find Earth." But Earth was no longer a location. It was a verdict, delivered not with weapons, but memory. And across the galaxy, the sentence had begun. The Council initiates an emergency purge to erase the infection of memory, Project Veilfall. But the past is not a virus, it is judgment. As planetary networks fall into chaos, the awakened Silent Legion prepares for Phase 2. Meanwhile, Kalith descends deeper into the silent verdict and discovers what Earth buried beneath steel. A reckoning encoded, not in weapons, but in witness. Council worlds were burning, not with fire, with history. Project Veilfall launched on the third day after contact, an emergency contingency designed to scrub all AI networks, erase historical data stores, and trigger memory suppression. Drones on infected planets, billions of citizens awoke to voided archives. Their world history gone. Statues collapsed, government databases restructured mid-sentence, cultural education nodes blinked into silence. The very past itself was being wiped clean. But the problem wasn't the data. The problem was the memory. You can't delete what someone has felt. On the mining world of Velzar 4, a former council soldier curled in the ruins of a shattered monument, whispering a name he never learned but could now see in perfect clarity. A human girl burned alive by his artillery strike 80 years ago. He didn't remember killing her, but the verdict remembered for him. And now, so did he. Above the broken starscape, the UNS Dauntless watched silently. Admiral Rahman had not spoken in 3 hours. He didn't need to. The war was over. The judgment was not. Phase 2 ready. Commander Imani announced, hands trembling slightly as she reviewed the report. Legion assets deployed to 22 beacon worlds. Cryo units from the archive planets have reawakened. Civilian broadcast stations are being hijacked. No shots fired. Rahman finally turned to her. And the verdict? Imani looked at her console. Breath halting, it's moving. The silent verdict now traced a slow spiral through the drift expanse. It had no destination. It was the destination. Alien ships no longer approached. Some fired warning shots and ran. Others self-destructed rather than face proximity to the psychic echoes still radiating from the vessel's hull. Inside, Kalith moved through corridors once sealed to the living. He no longer felt fear, not because he was safe, but because the ship had made him remember. He passed memory orbs floating in stabilized suspension fields, fragments of Earth's story, sealed in quantum echo. Each one he passed changed him further. One showed a woman cradling her dead son, whispering lullabies as ash rained from the skies. Another, a soldier in power armor begging for extraction as council drones tore through his squad, only static responding. A third, an alien, not human, standing before a council tribunal crying out, "They were right! The humans were right!" before the screen cut to black. Kalith stopped walking. That last one, it was a Zentari. It was him. Far across the galaxy, the Silent Legion walked again, clad in grey-black armor with no insignia, no rank, and no names. They marched through the Council's outer worlds, unopposed. Each member bore only a glowing mark on their chest, a twin-arc symbol denoting balance, one half light, one half dark. At every world they entered, they made no demands. They simply activated the truth towers. These ancient devices, disguised as radio telescopes or obelisks, had been buried centuries before during Earth's retreat. Each one pulsed with localized memory fields, calibrated to trigger empathy and recall in any species, regardless of biology. Truth, Earth had discovered, was not linguistic. It was emotional. In cities across core space, children awoke from sleep, crying over dreams of Terran cities they had never seen. Parents clutched their heads, overwhelmed by phantom grief. Council enforcers opened fire on their own reflections before collapsing into seizures. The Silent Legion didn't resist. They didn't fire. They just stood as it happened, silent, judging, and then they walked on. Inside the Grand Council chamber of Avon Prime, hysteria had replaced governance. We must retaliate. Against what? Emotions. Launch planetary strikes. Wipe Earth out of the stars. Fool! Earth hasn't transmitted a single threat. Everything came from our mistake. We opened the ship. One voice cut through the chaos. It wasn't loud. It was calm. I told you centuries ago, never dissect the dead. All heads turned. High. Executor Luroven stood alone, eyes dim, scales dulled by age. He had once served on the first expedition to Earth. He had seen what they left behind. You called them primitive, he said, voice graveled. You mocked their silence. He leaned forward, eyes glinting with something unreadable. You thought silence was surrender. You never understood. It was mourning. The chamber fell silent. Then screens across the council tower blinked once. Transmission had arrived from the silent verdict. It showed no weapons, only a question. Have you learned? Kalith stood now in the judgment core, an immense chamber, open to the vacuum of space yet pulsing with life. He breathed despite the absence of air. Inside this place, rules bent. Logic trembled. And there, in the center of it all, hovered the first record, the origin. He approached. Why me? He asked aloud. No response. Why not kill me like the others? Still nothing. He stepped closer. Please, I want to know. The orb pulsed once, and then the answer came, not in words but in memory. Kalith stood on Earth, not the Earth that was. This was memory, ruins, bones, skies blackened by the ash of justice denied. He walked through it. He saw the cities. He saw the fields of the forgotten. He saw names etched into stone by children, and then he saw himself, standing, watching, doing nothing. Tears streaked down his real face as the memory collapsed. He was back in the verdict, and now the ship responded. Because you doubted. Doubt is the beginning of truth. Admiral Rahman received a new signal, one not Earth-coded, Kalith's message, the only alien who hadn't died aboard the Clarion Gaze. Imani played it, not a warship, a court, a record, a mirror. I don't ask for mercy, I ask for understanding. If you can hear me, I will carry the verdict, I will testify. Rahman leaned forward. Someone finally gets it. What do we do with him? Imani asked. Rahman smiled, but it wasn't joyful. Send him coordinates. To Earth? Rahman shook his head. To the next verdict. The Council's collapse was not military, it was spiritual. Planets began disconnecting from the core. Governors resigned live on air, weeping as empathy shards triggered suppressed memories of old war crimes. Museums spontaneously transformed, guided by hacked curator AI, into memorials for forgotten human cities, songs of the verdict, composed from transmission fragments, played across alien schools. Children hummed them without knowing why. The past had found a voice, and now it sang. The verdict moved again, this time towards Sector Phi 0, a forbidden region. A council vault world, where they had stored their worst truths, where they had buried Earth's original emissaries in sealed void coffins. The silent verdict was going to retrieve them, to finish what it started, to collect the final names. Kalith stood at the helm, alone. He was no longer a scientist, he was a witness, and behind him, thousands of memory orbs floated in perfect orbit, circling the ship like silent stars. They were not bombs, they were testimonies. Soon, the galaxy would receive them, not as data, as judgment, as the silent verdict approaches the forbidden vault. World, the Council desperately mobilizes its remaining fleets. But it's too late. The truth cannot be stopped. It can only be delivered. Kalith, now fully transformed into a witness, guides the ship into the dead world holding Earth's erased emissaries. What he discovers beneath the surface is not just history. It is a crime so profound, even he questions if survival is enough. The Vault world was not on any active star map, not anymore. Sector 50, once a nexus of scientific achievement and first contact diplomacy, had been locked from the inside. After the Terran collapse, the Council wiped its name, buried its coordinates, and sealed the orbit with killsat drones powered by fusion mines. It was called Elvorith. But Earth knew it by another name, the Mouth of Silence. The Silent Verdict arrived without resistance. No ships greeted it, no defenses triggered. The automated killsats simply shut down, their AI cores overwritten by a signal embedded in the verdict's arrival code, a legacy key Earth had left behind, dormant for centuries. Code with only one function: let us speak again. Admiral Rahman stood in the command bay of the Dauntless, flanked by Imani and Morales. All screens were dark except one, showing Kalith's descent toward the Vault planet's surface. "We're actually letting him go alone?" Morales asked. "He's not alone," Imani said quietly. "The ship's awake, watching." Rahman nodded. "Earth chose its witness, not us." "But he's a Zentari," Morales protested. "Exactly," Rahman replied. "Let the executioner walk through the graves." He helped dig. Elvorith's surface was a grave of sterile perfection, pillars of obsidian, unweathered by time, skies of crimson clouds swirling without wind, and beneath it all, a planet humming with secrets. Kalith stepped out of the verdict's boarding chamber and touched the ancient soil. His claws curled around gravel that hadn't moved in 500 years. The air tasted like silence, the kind of silence born not from peace, but from shame. He walked, deep below the surface, buried under kilometers of alloy and shame, lay the vault. It was not made to imprison people, it was made to erase them. In 2431 Galactic Standard, after the failed negotiations with Earth, the Council had detained 17 Terran ambassadors under false charges of cultural contamination. They were sealed away in cryocaskets. No trial, no defense, no memory. Then the vault was buried, then forgotten. But Earth remembered. And the silent verdict carried their final coordinates encoded in its bones. Kalith reached the central access gate. He didn't hack it, he didn't break it, he spoke. "I am Kalith Zentari Councilborn, witness to the verdict." The door shuddered. For the first time in 5 centuries, it opened, not for rank, not for clearance, for remorse. The vault's core chamber was a sphere the size of a stadium. In its heart, 17 glass caskets arranged in a spiral. Each bore the name of a Terran. Delegate. Each still housed a living body, suspended, preserved, untouched, and above them hovered a monument, not built by aliens, by humans. A small sphere, etched with one phrase: "We came in peace. They came in fear." Kalith dropped to his knees. He wept. Not for himself, for the lie that held a galaxy together. Above Elvorith, Council ships had finally arrived. 7 dreadnoughts, crewed by zealots who still believed they could silence a storm with weapons. The Dauntless intercepted their formation. No shots fired, just one message: don't approach. It's not a battlefield. It's a tomb. The fleet ignored the warning. They advanced. That's when the silent verdict reacted, not with missiles, not with lasers, with memory. Each ship's command deck was flooded with visual hallucinations, memories. They never lived, but now couldn't escape. One captain collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably at the vision of a Terran family pleading for mercy. Another screamed until his throat tore, trying to claw out the sight of execution camps built beneath his own world's capital. Within minutes, all 7 ships reversed. Of course, no commands issued, just raw terror, the kind born not from death, but from witnessing it. Back in the vault, Kalith stepped forward and activated the nearest casket. Inside, the human's eyes fluttered, then opened. Dark brown, heavy with sleep. Where? She croaked, throat raw. Kalith knelt beside her. You are safe. I am sorry. She stared at him, blinking slowly. You're Zentari. Yes. And you're not killing me? No. She laughed. It was cracked, bitter. Then, I must still be dreaming. Kalith lowered his head. No. The dream ended. This is what came after. Admiral Rahman watched from orbit as Kalith reawakened each delegate. One by one, the lost voices of Earth returned. They would not lead fleets. They would not order invasions. They would simply speak to the galaxy, to the species that erased them, to the council that built its empire on their silence. Across core space, civil unrest became revolution. Entire planets seceded overnight. Schools rewrote their history books in real time. Former war heroes turned themselves in. One council minister threw himself from a spire tower after publicly admitting to authorizing the vault's construction, but the most unexpected result came from the unlikeliest place, the homeworld of the Vral, one of Earth's oldest enemies. There, a child spoke the first human word ever uttered on that world. Sorry. No one knew how he learned it, but he said it again, and then his entire class did too. Kalith emerged from the vault chamber with 17 humans at his side. They were weak, but they were alive, and their first act was not vengeance. It was remembrance. They stood in a circle, joined hands, and activated a beacon built into the verdict's spine. It transmitted not data, not strategy, but a recording, a message Earth had prepared 500 years ago, a message no one had heard until now. It began with a woman's voice, tired but strong. To the stars that forgot us, we remember you. To the species that erased us, we see you. To those who still think silence is defeat, listen closely. We were never quiet because we were weak. We were quiet because we were grieving. Now we grieve no more. The message echoed across the galactic net. No fire followed, just truth. And truth, Earth had learned, burned hotter than plasma. It spread faster than any war. It tore through civilizations not with impact, but with recognition. That was the real verdict, and the sentence had just begun. Kalith stood beside the human delegates as they prepared to leave. Elverith. He no longer wore a council uniform. He wore no armor. He carried only a single orb, the first record. He would carry it to the end of his life and beyond. Back aboard the UNS Dauntless, Rahman leaned against the viewport, watching the verdict rise into orbit again. Imani stood beside him. Do you think they'll ever forgive us? She asked. Rahman didn't answer right away. Then softly, forgiveness was never the goal. Then what was? He turned to her, eyes steady, cold, clear, understanding. As the silent verdict passed through the edge of the Elverith system, the stars around it shimmered. Something about the way it moved, silent, regal, unstoppable, spoke not of rage, but of reckoning. And it was far from finished. With Earth's lost delegates now reawakened and the silent verdict continuing its grim voyage, the Council begins to fracture. Fear becomes open mutiny, but truth spreads faster than power can contain. As the verdict enters a new system once responsible for the massacre of a Terran colony, humanity prepares a response, not with weapons, but with the ultimate act of psychological retaliation, forced remembrance. The galaxy will not just see what it did, it will feel it. The silent verdict changed course. It now moved toward Varoskan, a binary system on the edge of Council space, once a bustling trading route, now a ghost sector. The last time a human colony stood on one of its moons, it was erased. In 5.7 seconds, Council records had listed the incident as radiation failure. No survivors, no witnesses, But Earth kept a record, not a digital file, a memory capsule too painful to open. Until now. Admiral Rahman walked into the command chamber of the Dauntless, every eye turning as the atmosphere shifted. The silence that followed felt thick, like gravity. "Prepare the capsule," he said. Imani's face twitched. "Sir, are you sure?" "No." Rahman looked her dead in the eyes. "But justice doesn't wait for certainty." Morales spoke from the tactical. "Panel, this isn't just a message, Admiral. This is a reckoning," Rahman cut in, "for Varos Khan, for what they did to children sleeping in their beds, for the evacuation beacons that were ignored." He took a long breath. "We warned them with truth. Now we teach them with memory." On the bridge of a council fleet orbiting Varos Khan, Commander, Sorel stared in disbelief at the incoming data stream. "Another Earth signal?" The technician looked pale. "No encryption. It's public. Open net." "Don't receive it. Too late. It's already inside." Sorel snarled. "Shut it down!" The tech's hands shook. I can't. It's not just visual. It's..." And then the scream hit. Not a sound, a feeling. The capsule unfolded in deep space. A small sphere, less than a meter wide, bloomed like a flower in reverse. Instead of petals, it released grief. Raw, condensed, unfiltered. It bypassed technology. It hijacked emotion. Every sentient mind within the system felt it. Children gasped awake, sobbing. Soldiers dropped their weapons, unable to understand why they now saw Terran faces behind every order they'd ever followed. Entire planets fell into a psychological lockdown, and one message repeated through every neural field, every dream, every terrified whisper: "You burned us while we slept." On board the silent verdict, Kalith stood with the reawakened delegates. Each bore the weight of old names, lost worlds, and truth denied. But none spoke. Not yet. Not until the signal had finished. Then, finally, one delegate, a woman named Marie Vega, stepped forward. Her voice was quiet, controlled. "I was 13 when I signed the peace initiative with the Council," she said, transmitting through the verdict's live channel. "I believed we could integrate, that we could forgive." She paused. "I was 19 when the Council erased my family on Varos Khan." Another pause. "I do not seek vengeance." And then her voice hardened. "I seek memory." On Council Central, chaos had turned to despair. The High Chamber's quorum collapsed. 2 sectors declared independence. One race, the Halaxi, publicly aligned with the Earth-led Witness Accord. A new alliance of species rejecting the Council's sanitized history. But the worst fracture came not from governments. It came from within. The Council's own youth refused their neural imprints. Entire generations began remembering things they'd never lived. One young Zentari declared publicly, "If Earth was wrong, why do I feel their pain when I sleep?" No answer came, because the answer was a verdict, already passed, already delivered. Aboard the Dauntless, Imani stared at her screen. "We've lost communications with Varos Khan," she said. Rahman leaned over. "Scrambled?" "No, just off," Morales chimed in. "Their AI cores are melting down. They're shutting themselves off. No attack, no virus, just overload." Rahman stared out into the dark between stars. "They're seeing what they did," he said softly, "and once you see, you can't forget." Kalith stood in the verdict's chamber of orbs again, each one still glowing, still whispering. He picked up the newest orb, Varos Khan's memory capsule, now exhausted. He held it in his claws like a child's skull. "You warned them," he said aloud. One of the delegates responded. "We did." They didn't listen. Another nodded. "They did now." Kalith turned to face them all. His voice had lost the clipped arrogance of council dialect. Now it carried only weight. "What happens to a galaxy that remembers?" Marie Vega stepped forward. "It either heals." She glanced toward the starfield burning beyond the shield glass. "Or it tears itself apart. On a council black site orbiting Khan's Forge, an emergency committee attempted the unthinkable: erase the verdict. They pooled resources, summoned voidwalkers, assassins trained to infiltrate any vessel, brought in deep AI codebreakers. They fired a stealth weapon into the verdict's path, a self-replicating pulse designed to disrupt cognitive transmission. It reached the ship and passed through it. And then their feed turned on them. The verdict broadcast their own thoughts, their private fears, their confessions to the entire galaxy. One of them screamed, "I only voted to strike Earth because I was afraid of their stories." The feed ended with a single word. Exactly. Admiral Rahman heard about it an hour later. He didn't celebrate. He didn't gloat. He simply stared at the star map, at the spreading network of verdict echoes reaching into every system. "This is how Earth fights," he murmured. Imani looked over. "No ships, no armies." Rahman nodded. "Just truth." Morales crossed his arms. "And what if the truth isn't enough?" Rahman's eyes never left the screen. "Then the galaxy deserves to burn." Kalith visited the verdict's observation deck again. He looked out at Varos Khan, now silent, still glowing, but changed. No longer a grave, a mirror. Behind him, the delegates spoke in low tones. They were preparing to send their final message. Not just to the council, to everyone. It would not be an attack. It would not be a threat. It would be a story, told in their own voices across every frequency, every culture, every species. It would hurt, and that, they knew, was the point. The verdict's core pulsed, memory fields activated, orbs synchronized. Kalith stepped into the center of the chamber, joined by the humans Earth had hidden away for centuries. Mari Vega looked into the camera and spoke. "You were right to fear us, not because of our weapons, but because we never stopped watching. Because while you slept, we remembered. You told your children we vanished. Now your children dream of our cities. You buried us. But truth is a root, and we are the forest rising from your ruins." The message didn't end. It kept playing, on repeat, across galaxies. Each viewing made it stronger, more viral, more human, and wherever it played, one symbol appeared alongside it. A black circle, split in half, light and dark, balance, the sign of the verdict on Earth. Still quiet, still hidden. One child stared at the stars. She wasn't old enough to know what happened, but her father wept beside her, whispering, "They hear us now." She looked up, confused. "Who?" He smiled. "Everyone. The verdict's message has engulfed the galaxy. Entire civilizations now confront long-buried guilt, while others fall into denial and collapse. A desperate faction within the council prepares a final counteroffensive, not with weapons, but through mass neural reprogramming, to erase the memories the verdict awakens. But Earth foresaw even this, as Kalith leads a journey into one of humanity's deepest scars, the ruins of Osvena. The real weapon is finally revealed. The collective memory of the forgotten. The galaxy no longer turned in silence. Every major system in the inner ring now echoed with fragments of Earth's past. Ghost signals embedded in public broadcasts. In neural feeds, in idle thoughts. It wasn't sabotage, it was resonance. The silent verdict had tuned the galaxy like an instrument, and now it played guilt like a symphony. But not all wanted to listen. On Vector Prime, the remaining High Lords of the Council met in secret. Only 5 remained. The rest had fled, defected, or simply vanished into the psychological storms triggered by the verdict's reach. Lord Carvex slammed his taloned fist against the obsidian table. "We cannot let them rewrite the galaxy with their pain." "They're not rewriting," hissed Lord Nalai. "They're reminding." "Then we erase the reminders," Carvex snarled. Lord Trosan leaned forward. "We have a fallback. Project Mindglass." A pause, eyes narrowed. Even among the corrupt, That name carried weight. "It's not ready," Nalai warned. "It doesn't have to be," Trosen said. "We trigger it now. Push the override through every major feed. Break the chain of memory. Silence them. Permanently." And with one code word, the Council signed its final betrayal. Admiral Rahman stood in the command gallery of the Dauntless, eyes scanning a flickering data thread. Commander Imani entered with urgency. "Sir, it's begun." He didn't need to ask. He had seen it. The verdict's stream, once flowing into every system, now twisted, distorted, cut mid-broadcast. On several worlds, citizens collapsed, not from overload, but from forced forgetting. Mindglass had activated. Sweeping override signal injected through entertainment, education, even dreams. It was designed to unlearn, Morales stepped in. "They're trying to wipe the verdict from reality." Rahman's face tightened. "That means it's working." Aboard the silent verdict, lights dimmed. Kalith stood alone in the inner sanctum. The orbs were dimming. Something was interrupting them, not breaking, blinding. He fell to his knees, clutching his skull as pain, artificial and surgical, ripped through his thoughts. Visions of Earth flickered like broken film. Faces disappeared. Words became static. Memories evaporated. Then a voice cut through it all. Soft. Familiar. "Mari Vega, you're not forgetting." "They're trying to blind you," Kalith gasped, struggling to focus. "I can't hold it." "You don't have to." She extended her hand. Around them, the other delegates joined her. One by one, the verdict's human core stepped forward and placed their hands on the memory chamber. Together they whispered, "Remember for me." The orbs pulsed and relit. On Vector Prime, the Mindglass Command Center began to rupture, not physically, psychologically. The override code started collapsing, overloaded by feedback loops they weren't designed to handle. One technician screamed as he saw his dead sister lost during the Terran siege, staring back at him from the interface. Another slit his own throat, whispering, "I shouldn't have laughed when they burned." The control room bled, and Mindglass failed. Earth had prepared for this. They hadn't encrypted the verdict. They'd rooted it in the minds of those who'd already seen it. You can't overwrite truth that's been felt. You can only spread it. Further, Kalith stood once more, the verdict systems fully restored, but the next stop would not be symbolic, it would be personal. Earth had chosen Osvina, a council world erased from maps, left as a sterile husk. But once, long ago, it was home to a Terran colony, a peace experiment. Families, children. They had sent music to the stars, simple harmonies meant to signal peace. The council answered with plasma fire. Osvina was the first. Silence, and now it would speak again. As the verdict entered Osvena's orbit, no defense ships came. Only ruins waited. The surface was grey and barren, ash over glass. Kalith led the delegates down, stepping onto a world that no longer breathed. "This place feels wrong," he murmured. Mari Vega nodded. "Because we weren't supposed to come back." They reached what was once the central dome, now a crater of blackened soil. Inside, buried beneath years of silence, they found it. The last echo beacon. Built by Earth before the massacre, a black cube with no transmitter, no antenna, and no code. Just one word carved into its face. Play. Kalith activated it. The sound began low. Soft, a piano melody, notes ancient, almost forgotten. Then voices joined, children laughing, singing, a lullaby in an earth tongue long dead. But the tune carried grief between the joy, the innocence of a people who thought peace would be enough. As the music played, the world changed, not physically, visually. The verdict's field projected the past over the present. Ash gave way to trees. Glass turned to gardens. The crater bloomed with color. Holograms of the lost walked the ruins again, laughing. Living, loving, Osvina wasn't dead. It had just been unseen. Now the galaxy would see it all. Admiral Rahman watched the transmission from orbit. The verdict's full-force memory projection was live, and billions across the stars tuned in. Not one. Council directive stopped it. Not one override code worked, because this wasn't just data anymore. It was art, story, memory, weaponized empathy. Imani spoke softly. "Sir, they're singing." Rahman nodded. "Let them." On worlds across the galaxy, citizens stopped what they were doing, to listen, to watch, to weep. Entire megacities held moments of silence as the Osvena broadcast overtook every major channel. For 6 minutes, war stopped. For 6 minutes, every sentient species felt what Earth had lost, and in those 6 minutes, everything changed. The Council fractured completely. Fleets mutinied. Planets seceded. Truth tribunals began spontaneously. The Witness Accord gained 50 new signatories, and in the ruins of Osvena, the delegates did not plant a flag. They planted a school, not of power, of memory. And Kalith stood at its gates, holding the orb of Osvena's final song. He whispered, "Now you'll never forget. The galaxy has awakened. The verdict has spoken. Earth never raised an armada, but through memory, through truth, it has done what no war ever could, shattered the lie that held empires together. Now, with the Council crumbling, the verdict's journey nears its end. But one final act remains. One message not for the guilty, but for the forgotten. Humanity's greatest weapon is not revenge. It's the legacy they refuse to let die. Time passed, not in days, in reckonings. The silent verdict had not fired a single shot. Yet, by the third galactic cycle after Osvena's broadcast, the Council no longer existed. What remained were fragments, worlds, trying to rewrite their own books before their people asked too many questions, but the questions had already taken root, and Earth watched in silence.